Alright guys, Halowax here. Tonight we're going to go over the official tutorial for Anakin Starkiller's V2 V3 Builder's Kit. This episode will be just to locate the holes for the V2. So we're going to go over locating the cone knob hole and the mystery chunk hole. So let's begin. Stuff you're going to need. A piece of angle iron. This is 1 inch by 1 inch that I picked up from Lowe's. You've seen me in previous videos use this. I just spray painted it black for some test reason. I forgot exactly. But you're gonna need this. You can grab this at Lowe's cheap. It comes in 3 feet. Pencil. Pair of scissors. A center punch, and it's always good to have a Sharpie to double check everything and make sure you printed it to scale. A pair of mics is great, and this right here is the templates. Trooper Trent made these. He came to our rescue again. I templated them all with paper. Was taking all my measurements, and I showed Trent. I said, "This is what I come up with," and he's like, "Ooh, kind of complicated. Give me 15 minutes." So I gave him the measurements, and he whipped this up. So all you have to do is print this out to 100% scale, and then double check it. Since he included the measurements on the side here, just grab your mics and make sure it's the right measurement, and if it matches, you're safe to cut them out and start taping them on. If they're smaller or bigger, just keep on printing it out 1% lower in scale until you get the exact scale. So I'm going to cut out our booster template and our mystery chunk template. This is actually pretty faded because I printed out a bunch and my printer was getting low on ink, but gotta give another huge shout out to Trent for hooking us up with these templates. This I just did a trial run, and wow, is it so much quicker than mapping these all out, sketching them on a piece of paper, and tying everything in. Because originally this is what I was writing up as a tutorial, and it takes a long time to get all that square and right. So this will be available on the forum. Just download it and print it out. So you cut out all the stencils first, and then we'll start on the next step. Now with the stencils cut out, the next step would be to make sure this is in the correct orientation with the pommel. I have 3 or 4 videos out there with how to put this in the correct orientation, so I don't want to waste time showing you how to do that now. Just a link below a video to watch. So we have the pommel cube in the center of we have the grub screw centered in this pommel cube right of the D-ring. This is very important because if this isn't lined up correctly, the mystery chunk will be in the wrong place. Lock the rings into its position with tape. This isn't really necessary, but I always like doing that because it's sturdy and you don't want it to fall or whatever. So just lock it in. The next step is we need to make a center line on the V2, and I have another video showing how to line up the stencils with a center line. So we're going to take our angle iron that we got, put it halfway on the grub screw, just like Trooper Trent's stencils, and we're going to mark with a pencil our start line, and we're going to make sure the pencil is 90 degrees with the angle iron. I'm going to put our start line on the pommel recess. Okay, so now we got our starting line here. We're going to take our booster template that we cut out. Notice how Trent has an arrow here. This means we're going to line this up on our start line just like his stencils. Throw some blue tape on there. So if this doesn't line up correctly, I mean, if there's a huge gap between them, you know it's not printed to the correct scale. And don't skimp here, because if it's not touching, this is not in the right location. So go back to the printer, remember what scale you printed it at. If you printed it at, say 95, and add up until it touches, because it has to touch. Next we're going to do the mystery chunk. So we're going to line this up on our pencil line, go around. Somebody's upstairs being loud as hell. Oh, if it's not going to be that loud, I'm going to start over. There we go. The mystery chunk should be right on the edge of this pommel cube line. That's how Dan has his other runs. So when the chunk is in there, it's half and half. It's like kind of down the middle. So now that we have our templates on, I use a center punch. If you've gotten into the lightsaber hobby, lightsabers are round, and it's very hard to drill a hole on them straight. So a center punch, this is really cheap, $4 or $5 on Amazon. Get this, you won't screw up and you won't ruin your lightsaber. But all you do is go like this and press in, and it will punch a little ding in there, and the drill bit will sit in there and spin. I personally am not going to do this right now, because I'm going to put this as my Alec Guinness edition, and I'm going to put a toggle switch in there, and I'm still haven't found the correct toggle switch I want, so I'm not going to drill that hole. Neither am I going to drill the mystery chunk hole, but I will show you what needs to be done with the mystery chunk. So let's get to that. Alright, so this is the leather tool that we are now using as the mystery chunk, the closest thing to the real deal. There's a little modification that you have to do to it. This is another one that I have a ton of these. Trying to find the real vintage one, so I've over the years been collecting all different kinds I found on eBay. But the one that you get, that Dan linked in his thread, has the same thing. This collar is much thinner than this part over here. So I threw mine on the lathe and milled it down to I think it was 4.10 millimeters, because I have a 4.20 millimeter drill bit that we'll be using on the V3. So I milled that down. In my written tutorial, you can see how to take the leather tool, because not everybody has a lathe, put it in the end of a drill chuck, and use sandpaper, and when the drill spins, the sandpaper will sand it down. It takes a long time, but it can be done. I've done it before, but I was in a rush when I did this. I just threw it on the lathe and milled this down in about a minute. So you're going to want to take the mystery chunk and mill it down, sand it and mill it down so it's all one size, preferably whatever size drill bit you want to use. It doesn't have to be a 420 drill bit. Any drill bit that you have that you're willing to drill, get it down to that size and just drill your hole, put it in. If the hole is too big, you don't want the hole bigger than this, because you don't want to see the hole outside the mystery chunk. But if it's loose, just E6000 it in there. But the other Starkiller pommel I have that's already drilled for the mystery chunk, this falls right in there and works perfect. This is my naked Starkiller V2. As you can see, it works perfect. I believe this was drilled out for a 4 millimeter a 5 millimeter, 6 millimeter. It's a 5 millimeter hole. Alright, so now to the cone knob. The cone knob that Dan supplies with the kit is absolutely gorgeous. And it's got a 6 millimeter by 1.00 thread pitch. So you're going to need a drill bit, which to tap 6 millimeter, you're going to need a 5 millimeter drill bit and a M6 by 1.0 tap. You can grab these off Amazon individually for a couple bucks a piece. You are going to need a tap handle, so if you do have a tap handle, that's kudos to you, but if you don't, you're going to have to grab a tap handle too to tap this in. So I also have other videos showing how to drill and tap, and like I said, since this is going to be Alec Guinness edition, I'm not going to puncture this hole just yet, because hopefully I can find the right thread pitch of the toggle switch and thread it in. So I don't really want to do that right now, but you get the point. So you drill with the 5 millimeter drill bit, and then you would tap it with the 6 millimeter tap, and screw in your cone knob, and you're good. So that pretty much wraps up the V2 templates. The V2 templates are very easy. It's only really 2 of them, and that's that. I'm sorry I can't go into full depth of puncturing and tapping, but I will promise you'll see all that on my next video with the V3, because that's what I'm personally going to do to it. So if there's any questions whatsoever, feel free to post in the forum or message me. But the big key is making sure these connect and line up, because if they don't, these dimensions will be off. You don't want that. So that's actually all of it to locating the 2 holes. To weather this acid age, chemically age it, paint chips, clamp modifications, please see the FX thread, the Anakin Starkiller's FX thread, where I've covered all of that stuff there. So I hope this video helps explain exactly what's going on. The tutorial part I've kind of guinea rigged and used Dan's FX booster to simulate in the pictures of the drilling and the tapping and everything. So that's why the video will not match the actual tutorial thread. So I hope this helps. The V3 will be much more in depth, so I look forward to seeing you guys all then. Hope this helps you. Super shout out to Trooper Trent for saving our tail again. Really appreciate it, buddy. You're the best. Thank you all for watching. Have a good night. Alright guys, bonus scene. When drilling these holes, you want them as straight to 90 degrees as possible, because especially with the cone knob, if you're drilling it and off a little bit, you don't want the cone knob crooked. With the mystery trunk, you can kinda, I still wouldn't want a crooked hole in there, because you could always drill it just a little bit bigger and have the leather tool fall in there and epoxy E6000 it in. But still, we want to make these as 90 as possible. If you have a drill press, perfect. But a lot of people don't, and I get this PM a lot on how to drill the hole without worries. And I came up with this little kind of ghetto version of how to do it. So I've explained it online, and some people still question exactly what the hell I'm talking about. So I'm just going to set the camera up here and show you how you can do it. I've done this with job sites that I don't have my drill press, but as long as your drill that you're using is got a flat bottom and is 90 degrees with it, with this, so it's the same angle. You can put this up against a wall or something 90 degrees and use that as a guide to press it down. So let's set something up real quick to explain. Okay, now so I put a piece of wood here because the booster is thicker than the actual hilt. So I'm going to hang the booster off that edge there because this dimension is all the same, so it will stay flat. You can put the hilt up against the flat wall here, get this 90 degrees, and then of course I don't have a drill bit in the freaking drill for this video, damn it. But then you would just use the wall here as a guide and drill it this way. If you take your time and go very slow, use the wall to hold the drill, you can simulate the drill press. That's pretty much to it. I've done it in the past and it's worked. You just got to make sure you take your time. But if you do have a drill press, that's the way to go. So I hope this helped. Okay guys, Haliwax here, back in the shed. I forgot to mention how to do the milling circle in the pommel cube here on the V2. So actually Dan Starkiller and I were talking a while ago and he came up with this trick. And I thought it was pretty ingenious. I would have never thought of doing it this way. I have my own little mini mill and I was planning on putting mine in with a mini mill, but not everybody has a mini mill, and this tutorial I'm trying to do so everybody can put these V2s together. That's why we use paper templates and basic stuff around the house. So when Dan told me about this bolt trick that he did, I was like, oh, that's it. We got to throw that in there. So Dan used a 3/8 by 16 set screw and stamped it into the pommel. I ended up measuring the circle on his FX run, which was 6.5 millimeter. And ironically, because I got home from work late tonight and the hardware store was closed, I grabbed these 2.5 inch long 1/4-20 bolts just a few days ago for, I forgot what it was, bolting something down in the shop. I forgot if it was the drill press or whatever, but I bought these bolts. So I said, what the hell are the chances of the bottom being the same? And sure enough, the bottom circle here is 6.64 millimeters. So I said, that's freaking close enough for me. So now I did some test stampings on some, oh, this stuff's still hot, on the on some scrap material, and it works great. So I only have like one try at this. So, well actually no, because I just put it on the mill and start over. But let's try and make this work. So I'm using, this is a Hillman, whatever it is, from Lowe's. Yeah, I think it is from Lowe's. I'll get the exact part number and throw it here. So I'm using a 1/4-20 by, I think this is 2.5 inch long bolt, and we're going to use a little bit of heat to heat up the pommel, get that metal soft, and then we're going to stamp it. I usually use my little hammer. This is my work hammer. It's a 16 ounce framing hammer, finish hammer, sorry. Framing hammer's in the other shed. So let's begin. Always eye protection, no matter what. So we're going to start our torch. I forgot to mention, this circle is not centered in the pommel cube channel. If you grab onto the top of the channel, and come down, I believe it was 11 millimeters, and I made my center dot there. So I'm gonna add just a little bit more. I had to go out and get a new torch. I'm on a budget right now, so I bought this cheap one. The head on it sucks. Here we go, I'm going to stall it out. Yep. Ah. The gas doesn't like being upside down. So now with it warm, I'm going to try and center it as best we can. Keep it flat. Wow! Oh, can you see that? Dan, that works perfect. Perfect. Wow. Boy, that is... So, I'm really happy about this. Thank Anakin Starkiller for sharing this bolt trick. That worked awesome. So, let's head now back into the basement and show you how to locate where to stamp this. This is very, very positive. Great result. Alright guys, we're back in the basement. So I stand corrected. This is a 3/8 by 16 bolt. Now when I pull it out of my drawer is with all my Spirit of Obi-Wan parts, and I got a new pommel from Roman, a chrome one from my MK1, and I needed a longer bolt. So I ended up going and getting a 3/8 by 16 bolt. That's why, ironically, it matches exactly what Dan Starkiller suggested. So right here, I'll link to the Lowe's part number or where to purchase this bolt. Just remember, it's a 3/8 by 16. The length really doesn't matter. This is 2.5, and it seems to work just fine for stamping. The shorter, the harder it is to hold. And if you're going to use heat, you want to keep your hand away from the pommel. So the part number is number 63326, and it's like 80 cents. Now to find the center, we measure down. We take our mics, we hook on the top here of the pommel cube section, and it's just a little over 11.2 millimeter. That's our center mark. As you can see, I made a little center mark with a Sharpie, and then back on film in the shed, you saw me carefully line up the bolt on the cube, and just one little stamp, and it came out phenomenal. And now on the V3 has something like this, but it's kind of half the shape. So I think I'll sand down one end of the bolt and stamp it in the V3. The circle wants to be one recess away from the D-ring. So one, well actually two. So it's the second one from the left. That's where the circle goes. That's pretty much it. Gotta thank Dan for sharing this trick. It worked unbelievable. Check that circle out. Huh. So I actually like this better than putting it on my mill and putting a milling mark in there. And ironically, I have a end mill bit that size, but I prefer this. I'm going to leave it like this. So if you guys really want me to do, I'm sorry that this video doesn't show me drilling and tapping all the holes in the V2, but I hope you get the point across. The build thread, which I'll link below in the description, I simulate the drilling and tapping with Anakin Starkiller's FX run, so that's why you see it without the holes in it. I'm using his as a fill-in. But if you guys really want me to go through the process and drill and tap it, send me a message on the RPF. The first person to send me a message on the RPF willing to donate their saber to me to stamp, drill, and tap, and and mill down the leather tool. I'll send it right back to you as long as I get to use it on film. So that's pretty much it. That wraps up the V2. So I think I covered everything. If not, you check out the thread for updates. So thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate your time, and I hope this helps. Dan, freaking killer idea. Have a good night, guys.